Welcome back, True Seeker. July 26th, 2018. In the news today, a victim from September 11th, 2001 has been identified for the first time. And what jumps out right away about this story is that it's July 26th. This is the day in the year 1788 that New York became the 11th state. July 26th. And if you look up the first governor of New York, George Clinton, he was born July 26, 1739. Dates on the calendar, they're very important to Freemasonry. And if you learn the code that is important to Freemasonry, known as Gematria, you'll see right through news headlines. Anytime emphasis is put on a word in a headline, there's gematria behind it. Notice finality, the emphasized word. Using the alphabetic order, finality sums to 96, like Freemason, like knowledge. And using the alphabetic order plus numerology, finality, Freemason, and knowledge all sum to 42. And what's interesting about 42 and 96 is they have a mathematical relationship. If you take the divisors of 42, the numbers that divide into 42, and add them together, they sum to 96. Ancient knowledge, the mathematics of the world we live in, a study that's important to Kabbalah, which is what Freemasonry is based in. Albert Pike, the only Confederate soldier with a statue in Washington, D.C., the Freemason, in his book Morals and Dogma, he says Freemasonry owes all thanks to Kabbalah. Kabbalah has the core belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. This is where the relevance of this study comes from. So in light of the 42 coded into finality, again, this comes on New York City's birthday, and birthday happens to be a word with Gematria 42. So does the abbreviation NYC for New York City. The Freemason logo, it's a capital G with instruments of geometry around it, a compass and a square. And consider the word math equals 42. Capital G is the seventh letter. There's a cipher where you multiply each letter in the alphabet times 6. So A is 6, B is 12, C is 18. G is 7 times 6, 42. And just to give you a little more insight into this language before we move on to the next piece, Gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words, means geometry in language. And I want you to see something. When you write out the word geometry with the alphabetic order, it sums to 108. If you flip the alphabetic order around, geometry also sums to 108. There's not a lot of words that are the same forwards and backwards. And again, the significance of 108 comes from the mathematics, the geometry of this world we live in, the relationship between the sun, the earth, and the moon. They say the diameter of the sun is the diameter of 108 earths, and they say from the sun to the earth is the diameter of 108 suns. They also say from the moon to the earth is the diameter of 108 moons. And it's those mathematics that allow total eclipses to happen. The sun and moon to completely cover each other up. It's because of the distance and the size in comparison to the earth. So 108 has a very special relationship with the mathematics of this world. And further, if you just have ever taken geometry, I'm sure you remember graphing lines, measuring circles. Look at 108. How do you write 1? A line, 0 is a circle, and what's 8? 2 circles. Lines and circles, 108. So, next point. In the headlines, identified 17 years later. Technically, it's just shy of 17 years. 17 years will be September 11th, 2018. But they put 17 in the headline for a reason. Modern Freemasonry was established in 1717. And the word Mason has gematria of 17. The date of establishment for modern Freemasonry was June 24th in 1717. That was a date with numerology of 47, 6 plus 24 plus 17, 47. The Freemason logo, the compass in it, is set at 47 degrees. It's a tribute to the 47th problem of Euclid about how to establish foundation for a structure. It's also a tribute to time, where the tropics of this earth, Tropic of Capricorn, the Tropic of Cancer, which measure the solstices, which measure time, which measure the seasons, they're 47 degrees apart. On 9/11, Building 7, the third tower to collapse that day, which fell 8 hours after the larger buildings, that building was 47 stories tall, and each floor was 47,000 square feet. 47 floors tall, each floor 47,000 square feet. You know, they blame the attack on Osama bin Laden. Buildings 1 and 2 were 110 stories tall. Building 7, 47 stories tall. These numbers used ritualistically again and again. So, the next point that you should know. New York becomes the 11th state, July 26, 1788. George Clinton, born July 26, 1739. The first governor of New York. Did you know that Bill Clinton has no bloodline to the name Clinton? Bill Clinton was born Bill Blythe Jr. His biological father was found dead in a ditch May 17th, 1946. His mother remarried into this Clinton political family. Think about how Hillary would go on to be a senator in New York. Anyway, July 26, 1739. Emphasis on 39. The day New York became a state, 7/26, 1788, 7 plus 2 plus 6 plus 1 plus 7 plus 8 plus 8 equals 39. Established on a date with 39 numerology. Whoops. New York, 39. New York's the Empire State, Empire 39. NY, 39. When you flip the alphabetic order around, making Z1 and counting up to A is 26, NYC is 39. Look at the name George, 39. The name Clinton, when you flip the alphabetic order around and use numerology, 39. And 39 goes beyond just this code of letters and numbers. Look at how tall the United Nations is in New York, 39 floors tall. Look at what year New York hosted the World's Fair, 1939. Look at every single New York Super Bowl won by the Jets, 4 by the Giants. They all come back to the number 39, all of them. The hardest one to see is the Jets win because they won 16-7, like 167. 167 is the 39th prime number. The rest of them are easy to see. Just look at the scores. Also, look at the coordinates of the stadiums that the games were played on. You'll see it's 39 Central. Look at the date numerology for some of them. Dates with 39 numerology. Every New York Super Bowl comes back to 39. And it's a number that's used again and again and again ritualistically in all of the world of sports for New York. It's more than just the Super Bowls. This is the New York number. G-Min, by the way, with the alphabetic order, is 39. G7, M's 13, E's 5, N's 14. Added up, G-Min, 39, what they call the Giants. So, if you flip 39 around to bring this back to 9/11, you get the number 93. This code of letters and numbers, it originally comes from Hebrew, where you do read from right to left. So, 39 with the Hebrew way of reading is 93. And reflections in this study are important. The 93 World Trade Center bombing was blamed on the blind sheik, which equals 93. The new building that stands where the World Trade Centers once stood is the One World Trade Center, which equals 93. And I'll remind you that Bill Clinton became president in 93, and the first thing he did was he stopped the underground weapons testing of nuclear and atomic bombs, which had gone on for decades. And atomic bomb equals 93. Look up the story of the last pilot to die who dropped the bombs on Japan. He was 93 years old. And look up the definition of ground zero. The definition of ground zero is the point above or below ground where a nuclear or atomic bomb explodes. Then go look at the footage from the day of September 11th and ask yourself how those buildings turned to dust. And ask yourself if in 1993, when they were working on the World Trade Centers for months after the 93 World Trade Center bombing, if explosives might have been planted at the conclusion of 50 years of underground weapons testing that were meant to do exactly what was done September 11th, 2001. I'll remind you, in 1968, 911 was made the national emergency dialing code. World Trade Center construction began. George W. Bush graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones. The movie Space Odyssey 2001 came out, which is about technology overtaking man. And the New York Jets won the Super Bowl. Don't forget it was the New York Jets who sacked Drew Bledsoe that gave rise to Tom Brady and the Patriots right after the Patriot Act. New York Jets, think about it. Think it's a coincidence? It's not. The entire world of sports and news and entertainment is all scripted together. That's why there's so much predictive programming for 9/11 in the decades that came before it. And with regards to all of those things happening in 68, 33 years before 9/11, notice that false flag sums to 33. False flag 33, watch this. If you write out 33, it sums to 156. And why does that matter? 911, this is what's nice about Gematria.com. You can type in a number and get its properties. 911 is the 156th prime number. And another very relevant cipher to this study outside of the base ciphers is Jewish Gematria. There's actually a film that came out in 2014 called Gematria, and they use this cipher. But I just want you to see that false flag is 156 in that cipher. 911, the 156th prime. Again, when you write out 33, it sums to 156. Think about it. So, also today, if you watch ESPN, today ESPN for the first day started a countdown to them moving to New York City. And they started the countdown on New York's birthday. And what day are they moving to New York City? They're moving there on September 3rd, a date that can be written 3/9 like 39 or 9/3 like 93. And from today to September 3rd is 39 days later. Like I've taught for years, ESPN loves to put these numbers in front of people's face. Anytime ESPN puts a number on the screen, and I mean anytime, well, except for maybe like when they're counting the speed of the pitches in baseball games. And even sometimes there it's riddles. But anytime you're watching SportsCenter, the numbers they're putting up, there's meaning behind all of them. This study is paramount to the people who control this world. Freemasons and Kabbalah practicing Jews who own your government, media, banks. And that's not a secret. Also, the star of First Take is Stephen A. Smith. Look at the names Stephen and Smith. Remember when his mother died at age 61, just before the NBA Finals started? 61, Finals equals 61. The year before that, it was their reporter John Saunders. He died at age 61, just before the Finals began. Finals 61. Remember when Stuart Scott died at age 49, just days before Super Bowl 49? Anyway, back on point. The name of this man that was identified today on New York's birthday, supposed 9/11 victim. His name, right here, Scott Michael Johnson. And the Scott part right away makes me think of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, which is what pretty much all the founders of this nation were. George Washington, a Scottish Rite Freemason, the headquarters for the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in Washington, D.C., the other city that got attacked on 9/11. And let's not forget what happened in Washington, D.C. Flight 77 hit the Pentagon exactly 77 minutes after taking off, according to the 9/11 Commission report. If you look it up, the Pentagon's 77 feet tall. It's on the 77th meridian. Then you bring in your Gematria skills and you write out September 11th. And what do you think it equals? 77. Right here. This cipher right here, this is the bread and butter, this dark blue one. This is the one where you're going to get the majority of your research finds. Look what happens when you write out World Trade Center. 77 on September 11th. You know, where this comes from is United States Gematria of 77. Where else it comes from is right here. Judaism, 77. Theater, 77. Zionist, 77. There's a day of Jewish tragedy. It's called Tisha B'Av. It's to remember the destruction of the two temples. And look at what Tisha B'Av equals in Jewish Gematria. 911. The destruction of the two temples. How about the two towers? You know? Also, September 11th, the day that leaves 111 days left in the year. New York, 111. New York, the 11th state. The World Trade Centers look like giant 11s. It happened on the 11th day of the month. World Trade Centers 1 and 2 were 110 stories tall. 110. 11, the master number in numerology. So anyway, coming back here, the name of this victim, Scott Michael Johnson, with the alphabetic order sums to 223, just like the synagogue of Satan. In Revelation, the final book of the Bible, says the false Jews will rule in the end times, and their name is the synagogue of Satan. Now keep in mind, in the Bible, the Jews have hair of wool and dark skin. Do those sound like the Jewish people you think of today? The false Jews will rule in the end times. Now I'm not going to tell you what the end times are because I don't know exactly what that means. You know, that could be a giant stretch of time, but it seems based on the biblical riddle, we're definitely living within that period of time. You know? So another thing about this 223, in Jewish Gematria, Masonic equals 223. 223 is the 48th prime. In the base ciphers, Freemason sums to 48 in Hebrew and in English. Look at what false flag also equals. False flag, 48. How about propaganda, which 9/11 no doubt was, 48. Hoax. It wasn't exactly a hoax, but it was a major lie. You know, it was definitely a false flag. And I'll teach you something else about false flag. That 33 Gematria, look at the Gematria pirate. The Knights Templar, who are associated with Masonry, they became pirates for many years when they were cast out of France and Europe. And they used this tactic, the false flag. It's where the terminology comes from. They would put up flags of their enemies on their ships, do horrible things, so that their enemies would be blamed for these horrible atrocities who weren't really responsible. People see the flag on the boat and go, oh, it was them, I saw their flag. But somebody had made a forgery of their flag. That's where the term false flag comes from. Doing something to cause blame on somebody else. Like what they did on 9/11. You know? Started these wars that are still ongoing. So if you guys didn't get to see my video on Tisha B'Av and the predictive programming of September 11th through the album Supertramp, Breakfast in America, that video was removed yesterday by Google. They gave me a strike for it. Please look at my blog post about Supertramp's album, Breakfast in America. You can just read the blog post and get most of what was in the video. That album, so predictive of 9/11. There's not a better example of predictive programming for 9/11 than Supertramp's Breakfast in America. And I just want you to see that Breakfast in America equals 156. You know, 911, the 156th prime. Also think about what time 9/11 happened in America. It was breakfast time, you know. Didn't matter if you were on the West Coast or the East Coast. It happened in those hours. The time people are eating breakfast all across the nation. And if you look up the album cover, there's a woman in orange, 33, and she's a waitress, 33. And there's a whole lot more. It's looking at the World Trade Centers with the giant orange waitress in front of it. It's also, if you look at the word Supertramp written across the cover of the album, the World Trade Centers, you'll notice the U and the P are above the World Trade Centers. I can't show you any of this because that's why my album got taken down, but you can look it up. Supertramp, Breakfast in America. Look at how U and P are right above the World Trade Centers. And the bottom of the U, you can't see it because it's behind the World Trade Centers, so it looks just like an 11 instead of a U. If you put up a mirror against the U and P over the World Trade Centers, the P flips around and becomes a 9. So you have 9/11 right over the World Trade Centers on the Supertramp album. That album came out in 79, 22 years before 9/11. 79 is the 22nd prime, the master builder number. So, I'll link this post down below. I'll also link the Supertramp blog post down below. I can't show it in the video because they'll give me another copyright strike. I got a copyright strike for showing the album artwork. Can you believe it? But you just can't deny it. I've been teaching this stuff since 2013. If you're new here, I used to have a very popular YouTube channel. This video would already probably have 100,000 views, but I was deleted June of 2017. And ever since then, I've had about 15 channels censored, and they don't let any of my channels grow. They don't let the views really get up there. It's just permanent squash mode. They don't want this research, this knowledge out, because I have exposed as clearly as can be what's really going on in this world. I can do this every single day with every single news headline, and that's not an exaggeration. And it's not just that I can do it, so can you if you learn the code, if you start learning more about history, if you recognize these things. I mean, how many people today know that today's New York's birthday and the first governor was born on this day? I know these things from research. I know these things from reading. You see empty bookshelves behind me? They're not going to be empty for long. I got a lot of books. Done a lot of reading in my lifetime. You know, reading will take you places. And for all of you who don't read, you're wasting your mind. Reading strengthens your mind. And if you want a really good book to read, you should read the one I put out this year in March. Letters and Numbers. Have a great chapter in there on 9/11. You know? And the next book I write, I'm going to be sure to add today's news story to it. Because it's just more mocking by the exact same code. You know? Read Letters and Numbers. It begins with why there's 26 letters in the alphabet. Teaches you all the relevant Gematria ciphers, how to use them, why they matter, where they come from. And then a whole lot more. The world of scripted news, the world of rigged elections, the world of assassinations by the numbers, the world of celebrity deaths by the numbers. Got to learn about that code, murder by numbers. You know, and a whole lot more. The book's dense. Weather warfare, very real thing, something that's been admitted since 1952. A lot of important information in the book, Letters and Numbers. And I priced it at $5. 773 pages, you know. I priced it that low, not because it's some cheap, worthless read. I priced it that low so nobody has an excuse why they can't buy it, you know. All right, Truth Seeker. Till next time.